Hello everyone, my name is Sara, Chevere, creator and founder of Freedom Coach Academy. Welcome to this interview. I have a very special guest today and he called himself the Coffee Coach. His name is Steve Higginbotham and I am going to be asking him very important questions to know a little bit more about him and how he can help all of us. How are you, Steve?
I am wonderful. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm so glad to have you here. So, I want to know how did you become or became the coffee coach?
Great question. I'm glad that you asked that. Thank you so much. So, the Coffee Coach started back in 2001, and it was just a concept that I was in sales and I was still growing up within an industry that didn't really have mentors. The coaching world, everybody knows Tony Robbins and everybody knows Brian Tracy, who does sales coaching, but there really weren't mentors. And so I took it upon myself, also going through some struggles as I was learning how to work in an industry that didn't have mentors, and I just didn't want people to struggle like myself. So I took it upon myself to go out and reach out to individuals that I know some of them wanted to be highly successful, they were eager, they were driven, but they just didn't have that little bit of encouragement or that little bit of support. And I wanted to be there for them. I did not have a mentor early on in my career, which I wish I would have. And so I just started to help people, but I would go to the coffee shops because it was a little bit more relaxed. Get out of the whole corporate America hustle and bustle in a boardroom. Like our interview here, it's a little more formal, but it's still kind of relaxed. You go to a coffee shop and you don't have to drink coffee, you can have tea, but you can relax a little bit and have a more genuine, more authentic conversation. And that's where it began back in 2001. And most recently, I have now been really promoting my business.
That's good. That's good. And what makes you unique? What separates you from other coaches?
Great question. I love that. I think I have a very strong belief system. I got that from my previous experience having been in the military, and I drive really hard. But above and beyond that, I'm very passionate about helping people. Whether I'm a father, whether I'm doing anything with sports, or I'm actually in business, I don't want to see people struggle. I want to see people that are good people. I want them to succeed. Now, I'm not saying I have all the answers, but I know that I can be a hands-on mentor and really help them. So what makes me unique is my energy, my passion, my drive, and my willingness to kind of go above and beyond and go that little extra mile to help someone. A lot of my coaching is done consultatively, where I meet with them face to face, and then at times we can do it on WebExes or on the phone, but I'm very personable that way. And I think that's what makes me a little unique.
And who is your target audience? Who do you coach and mentor?
So I would say my specialty is not necessarily someone straight out of college, but they're looking for a career. Now, I've been in talent acquisition a little over 19 years. I served in the U.S. Navy for 4 years.
Wow.
And with that, I basically have learned how to do not only talent acquisition, but talent management. So my target audience is someone that's probably had 1 or 2 jobs that wants that career progression, or someone that has maybe 10 or 20 years of experience and they really want to transform themselves into either a manager, a leader, a director, or anything such as that. So about the 5 to 20 year mark is a really good sweet spot for me, and it really focuses around that career progression.
And what do you think is important for them to hire a coach? For those people that are looking for to progress within their company or in their career, or become like a mid or high level manager, why do you think it's important for them to have a coach?
So that's a tough question to answer, but a great question. And the reason I say that is a lot of people look at, okay, talent acquisition, we just hire people and we find them a job. Then some people have, let's say they're managers that are going to give them time. But let's be honest, a lot of managers, and when I say managers, I'm using that sort of like anybody that's a supervisor of people, a manager, or even a director. So I'm not talking about a CEO, and I'm not talking about, sort of support staff. But anyone that's a manager of people, they really don't manage other people's careers. Let's be honest. They're always in it with them. What's in it for me? So they always lack the time. We do a lot of things well. We hire great talent. We train great talent, We want to retain great talent, but we forget about the mentor piece of that talent. We don't have the time to mentor them. So the folks that want to come into this and be in that career progression, it doesn't mean they have to leave their company, but how do they get further on in their career? It starts with having someone that can kind of look at it from a different vernacular. Someone that can see the gaps, not be afraid, like myself, to tell them this is what you might be missing. Here's the other thing. And then there's also everyone communicates. However, we don't always connect with our employees. And we all have had bad bosses in the past.
Yes,
but we've also had great bosses too, right?
Yes.
So what are the difference between them? Sometimes they care a little bit more. Sometimes they help you with your career. And you don't find that a lot because everybody's so busy.
Yes.
So that's why they need a coach. That's why they need a mentor.
That's true. That's true. So when there's somebody that love their job, love their career, and they love their boss, basically they love what they do, how do you think, what is your method to help them to achieve higher levels within their companies?
That's a great question. Again, it's a little tricky because everybody's an individual. Everybody's a little bit different, and everybody has a different company, a different title, and a different boss. But there are some bosses out there that I call armchair leaders, and there's some bosses that are really hands-on leaders. So my consultation and what I do is I really sit down with them individually to find out who are they today, where do they want to go tomorrow, or in the next 1, 3, and 5 years, and how can I help them progress in their career and even transform. The more I know about them and the environment that they're in, the more I can kind of pick out and select a creative program that's going to help them. But I call this the whole transformational process. And I call it transformational leadership because let's just face it, that's what we all want to be at some point. And it's not leader necessarily being a CEO of a company, or like yourself, you coach a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yes.
It's not necessarily just being that, but it's leading your career. It's leading the next phase in your life. And a lot of this stuff can also blend into your personal life. It doesn't have to just be business. But when you go into career progression, you've got to look at, okay, how do I network with my internal stakeholders as well as my external? Now, there's a lot of websites out there. Most of you are familiar with, you find a job, buy on Indeed. Most of you are familiar with LinkedIn. However, are you really utilizing it? Who is in your company that you're not necessarily leveraging that relationship?
Yes.
And that's really where it becomes from a communications piece to a connection piece. And that's the difference, one of the biggest differences you can see.
So it sounds to me that you help them to close the gap and you help them to leverage their skills in order to achieve the goals that they want to achieve.
Correct. Yep.
That's great. That's actually really good. So we were talking a little bit before that I believe that anyone that wants to progress within their careers, they have to think like an entrepreneur. Why do you think is that?
I think the old way of working, I'm just going to use the stigma of corporate America. It's basically you go in a silo, you do your job, and this is the way it's always been done. Kind of don't basically reinvent the wheel if it's not broken. But let's be honest, everything that we've done in human nature, from science to technology to even our minds, are created. They're not all created equal, and if you think of where technology is today, then even where it was a year or 5 years ago, your career and your business as an entrepreneur, you have to think innovatively.
Yes.
And you have to be creative. And yes, the wheel works and it's circular and it's round and it'll get you there, but how many variations of the wheel are there? There's rubber, there's metal, there's wood, there's a lot of different styles of wheels, and not every one fits every single person. And with that, being an entrepreneur, you have to think outside the box. And I have a little saying that if there's you can't think outside the box if there's nothing inside the box. So you've got to check off your boxes, your career now, what you're doing, but you got to find out where your passion is. What do you really want to do? What I'm doing today isn't what I did 10 years ago because I'm evolving. I don't think of myself, oh, I'm trying to find myself or I'm trying to define myself. I think of it as I'm refining myself. I know my strengths, I'm throwing away my weaknesses, and I'm going after, here are my strengths. As you probably know, I love to talk. So why not be a speaker? Why not be a writer? Those are the paths that I'm going. And that's why I think I'm also a great mentor, is because I'm not afraid to stand up and say something that may not be the popular vote. And I think that's very important, that if you think like an entrepreneur, like what you're coaching, the people you work with, you're going to get ahead because you're pushing that envelope just a little further, that you're not
Correct.
sitting in that comfort zone,
Correct.
that you're getting outside that comfort zone, you're getting outside that box. That is very important.
You have put very good analogies on answering this question. That is great. So tell me something, because I know you were in the Navy.
Yes.
So how do you think the Navy has helped you? You know, throughout, now that you're not there, but how do you think the Navy has helped you throughout your whole career, and now as a mentor and a coach?
Absolutely. No, thanks for asking that. So first off, I know how to march. So that's a good thing. I know how to fold my clothes, because you had to do a lot of that. So that was boot camp stuff. But Navy taught me a lot about leadership. I mean, waking up at 4 a.m., going to bed at 11, being deprived of food, being deprived of sleep. Those are mental things that you don't normally do in a regular life, but you're forced there. You're forced to make decisions under kind of some of the stresses that you don't normally have. So when you're in business and you have to make a really tough decision, you've already sort of been prepared there. But the biggest thing that I think I got out of the Navy was really attention to detail, and focusing on, and how that's transformed in my life now, 20 years later, is I do things with intent now. I know what I want, I focus on the details, and I fine tune everything. So again, not trying to define it, but refine it. And also, when I was in the Navy, part of why I wanted to join was the U.S. Navy SEALs. And I did train with some of them. Although I didn't go to BUDS and I didn't complete that course, I did go through a 5-day selection course. The toughest week I've ever had, but honestly, I reflect on that week probably more than any week on my life. Now, if my wife's watching, of course, when I got married, very important date as well. But the Navy taught me how to push myself, how to pay attention to the details, and how to live with intent and do everything that has a purpose, because it might affect other people.
Wow, that is great. That is great. So what is unique about Steve, about the coffee coach, about your brand? What is unique about it?
I think the biggest thing that people are going to see is that I'm very personable. I'm very strict. I do have the details, but I like to have a little bit of humor. I joke around a little bit. So I do kind of make it lightheartedly. But I will push them out of their normal comfort zone. And I will test them and find out, where do they really want to go. And I'll, much like yourself, I know you're hosting some things where you're doing goals and you're doing initiations and things that are really going to progress people's lives and transform them from going from a 9-to-5 job to an entrepreneur. And I think that's wonderful. But you take those goals and you got to hold them accountable. And
Yes.
what I'm good at is kind of pushing people's buttons. You can ask my wife. I'm pretty good at that.
Interesting.
We don't want to go there yet.
That's different.
Yes, I know, right? And I think that really sets me aside from my brand, because I'm not just a coach, but I'm your coach. I want to get a little bit more intimate than just corporate America and know what you're doing. I want to know. It's almost like when you peel back the onion. You know, they're always saying peel back a layer, peel back a layer. I want to keep going deeper. And I am writing a book, and I won't go into much details about that, but there's one little section that I like to call snorkelers versus divers. Most people are snorkelers. They sit on the water, they put on their mask, and they look down, and everything's comfortable up there, right?
Yes.
Because they're floating and they're kind of chilling. And most people don't want to put on the tank and get on the wetsuit and go deeper. But when you're down there deep, it is a little bit scarier. You've got a little bit more pressure because of the water. But when you're looking around, you get to look at 360 views, up, down, aside. I look at myself as a coach very much like that. I'm not just going to take your goal and say, we're going to go from here, but we're going to look at other aspects of your life. Let's take a little bit of your personal life. Let's take your strengths. Let's also take your weaknesses and say, is this a weakness, or is this something we should focus on, or throw it away? Maybe it's an area for improvement, but it's not a strength. Why is it in our way? Is it helping us? Is it hurting us? And those are the things that I'm going to uncover. So when I look at my brand, the Coffee Coach, that I'm going to really spend some quality time with you, not only to get to know you, but really maybe challenge you and push you in some areas that you're not comfortable with to get you to that next phase, which is how the transformation really happens.
So, talking about challenges, what do you think is the biggest challenge that your audience or your clients have?
think a lot of it is just not knowing. It's the fear of, it's almost a prideful thing. It's the fear of, well, I don't really need a coach, and how is a coach really going to help me? All they're going to do is talk to me. And so why are they writing a check? Why are they helping
we know
us?
Yeah, that's not the
it's
case.
so much deeper than that, right?
Yeah.
I even have a mentor. I even have a coach.
Yes.
And I've even consulted you on times. Mm-hmm. So that's how we come together in the last couple of years, is to do this interview, is because we've known each other. We've worked together. That is very important. Who do you trust? Well, you can't always go to a shrink because they're very expensive, but sometimes you don't want to go to a shrink. We're not a shrink. I'm not a psychologist. I can't always go to my wife with everything because she doesn't understand my business, but who does? It's a coach. So it's not just someone we talk to, but it's someone you get a little bit more intimate with. And the reality of it is that person is going to challenge you. That person is going to hold you accountable. That person is going to see something in you that you don't see, or they're going to reassure you of something that you already know and give you the confidence. But the challenge that people have is it's in their head that they just don't want a coach or need a coach. And it's the fear of just crossing that barrier, writing the check, and really just setting yourself on. I'll give you an example. I helped someone find a position, a new job, and you know her, Sandy, who we just talked about a little earlier ago. It was hard for her to write the check. It was hard for her to take her ego and put it on the shelf and say, do I really need a coach? But after 4 weeks of really working with her pretty in depth, probably 10 to 15 hours, we really revamped her whole career and her philosophy and where she wanted to go in her career, and took all the companies away that she wasn't focused on. And that helped her transform into a brand new career, allowing her to get more than $12,000 to $20,000 more in her pocket. Nice. So the little bit she wrote me was nothing compared to what she just gained. But it was taking the step. Exactly. Just like an entrepreneur. It's a little bit riskier at the front end, but at the end of the day, a year from now, you're going to be so glad that you did that.
That is great. So what do you have to offer to all of us, to your audience? What do you have to offer to them?
So I'm always open to anyone giving me a call. On my website, it's www.coffeecoaches.com, and on there is my cell phone number. I give that up free. And I always will want to spend at least 15 minutes just getting to know who you are. So there's always that free consultation up front. If anybody watches this video or sees it through either Sarah's website or my website, all you have to do is mention that. I always give anywhere from at least 25% to 40% off. I help people with their resumes. I help them doing interviews. I also do what I call LinkedIn enhancement, because I'm not going to revamp everything, but I'm going to show you what a recruiter's perspective is. Again, I come from a recruiting side, so I've got talent acquisition and talent management. So I know how to hire people, and I know how to mentor and train people to get to the next level. So I offer those two things. And then the other one that I think is really, really special, that I'm really refining right now, that is part of my book that I'm writing, is transformational leadership. Working with some of the best leaders out there to sort of perfect who they are. They've got great qualities, they're eager, much like entrepreneurs, right? They have a lot of the qualities. They're driven, they're motivated. Maybe they don't have the money, or maybe they do and they don't know how to manage it. But there's something that they're lacking, and that's your job and my job to identify that and help them get there. So that's the whole transformational leadership piece.
Nice. And so again, can they find you?
So I am definitely on Twitter, Instagram, but my website, coffeecoaches.com.
Okay, perfect.
And everything is on there.
And then you're offering a 15-minute consultation, you said, to anybody that wants to advance in their careers, or
just
need like a resume review.
Correct. Anything that they want to talk about as far as interviewing. I do a lot of my coaching consultation in person, but I do have clients that are in different states. I have some people in different countries that I love to work with. So I do have to do it via Skype or cell phone in a sense. But I will always talk to anybody for at least 15 minutes to find out what do they want, and then I'll create a program around that. But on my website, it talks about transformational leadership. It talks about career progression. I do have workshops as well, so I do some group workshops. But I always help people write their resumes. I help them with interviewing, kind of the critiques. But the unique part about me is I am a recruiter, and I've also been in business development. So I'm recruiting people for jobs, and I'm placing people in jobs. So I kind of have that little bit of an in and out of what does it take to get away from I'm going to send my resume on the internet and pray that I get a job. There's a whole different way around that, what I call creative recruiting. That's also a unique trick that a lot of people don't talk about. Now that's my one-on-one coaching. That doesn't come for free, I will tell you that, but it's tricky. But I can help almost everybody find their job, not necessarily of their dreams, but again, some jobs are stepping stones. You need to move to this job, get this experience before you can move to that job. And my job during this consultation is to kind of walk you through what are you looking for now and where do you want to go. And again, that's free of charge.
That's great. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, I guess those 15 minutes are really important. Like you really offer something really good there. That's great. So I want to thank you, Steve, for the time that you have taken, to be with us, to clarify what the coffee coach is, and also offering this 15-minute consultation for anyone that wants to advance in their careers and wants to have more like a visual, like a visualization, a clear vision of where they want to go in their careers. Now, before we end now, I do like to ask you a few questions that are not necessarily that are related to the topic,
Okay.
but I like to ask the people that I interview. Okay?
Perfect.
Okay, so tell me how many cups of coffee you drink a day. Let's start with
So I have actually toned it down, believe it or not.
Okay.
So I drink less cups. I used to, when I first started in this industry 19 years ago, this was my routine every day when I first got out of the Navy. So at the Navy, I probably drank about 15 to 20 cups a day.
Oh my gosh.
And I didn't drink any water, so that was sort of my hydration.
Oh.
Horrible, I get it. So I come into recruiting. I used to start my day sometimes at 6:30, but always at 7. I'd have a full 16 ounce of coffee. By about 9:30, I would have another one.
Wow.
At lunch, I'd have 2 straight sodas, Coca-Cola, during lunch. At about 1:30, I'd have a Mountain Dew.
Oh my gosh.
And then at about 3:30 or 4, I'd have another full cup of coffee. That was my first year. Not a good diet.
no,
Now I've gotten it down
to
exactly. Now I've gotten it down to I love espresso. I like it stronger, more bold coffee, but less water. So I probably only drink about 6 to 8 cups of coffee. And most of the time I do triathlons. So on Saturdays, Fridays at nights, I don't drink coffees, and Saturday I don't drink coffee at all.
Okay. I actually was going to ask you about the triathlons.
Thank you.
So tell me, what do you love about doing triathlons?
It's going to sound a little crazy, but I love pushing myself mentally and physically further than I've ever gone.
Nice.
And I'll give you a scenario. And this is not a joke. So I've done 4 half Ironmans, so 70.3 miles. 4, technically they're Ironmans, but I call them halves. And the last one I did almost took me about 10 hours. And every one that I've done, so I've done about 15 to 20 triathlons, the smaller ones, but I really love the 70.3 because in my life, even in the Navy, I trained for 3, 4, maybe 5 hours a day, but it was split. So it was like 3 hours in the morning, 2 hours at night. Your body can handle that. A 70.3 on an average person at my age is going between about 5.5 to 6.5, maybe 7 hours. Now I'm a little slower. I don't love to run. The bike I love, but I'm hitting it 7 and 8 hours. So I'm a little slower than the average person. I did one that literally almost took me 10 hours. And the reason it happened was I didn't have my nutrition right. I got out there and I got about 6 miles on the run and I just sort of bonked out. I got to the point where I actually had to stop, bend over, and literally try to touch my toes because I was so exhausted. I felt like I was going to fall over.
Wow.
I love that feeling. My body is just completely taxed. I'm exhausted. Mentally, I'm drained and I'm starving. And that is where the magic happens. Can I push myself a little further? Can I go just a little more? And I love that feeling. Because I know that that was my limit. Even when I was training with the SEALs and I was in the Navy, there was a time, which we can talk about later, where I thought I was going to drown, that I blacked out underneath the pool. And so those are the 2 moments in my life where I literally pushed myself to complete exhaustion. But mentally, I wasn't done. That's what I love about it.
Wow, that's great. And what are you reading now?
So I'm reading Emotional Intelligence 2.0.
Okay.
And I have the book back here. I did have it. And then I just bought the book Living with a SEAL. And I know we were just talking about
I
that.
know.
So anything that has to do with the special warfare, and part of why the SEALs are so important with me is if you look at the Navy, not only does only a short or a small amount of people join the military, but even a smaller amount join the U.S. SEALs, which are the elite force within the Navy, but only a small few make it. So it's like the best of the best of the best. And it's the same thing. I did train with them. I'm certified. I've gone through 5 days of hell. Didn't go through hell week per se. But with that, that's where I get a lot of my inner drive. And that's really what pushes me. And I've always been that way. I've always been wound really tight. I've always had the adrenaline, the aggression, but now I channel it differently. You know, I have the patience now. I'd like to think the wisdom, but sometimes, but it's how do I channel that? And I put that into my clients. I want them to get the full sense of me.
That is great. Well, again, thank you so much for sharing all this.
Welcome.
I think you're going to be an inspiration to a lot of people that are going to be watching this interview. And they're probably going to want to ask you more questions after the final questions that I ask you as well. So hopefully, I'm looking forward for you to be able to inspire and to motivate and to be able to push people and challenge people to advance in their careers. And so thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Coffee Coach.
Thank you for having me. Can I ask you a question now?
All right.
So
go ahead.
Thank you for taking your time. This has been wonderful. But let me ask you, who is Sara and what do you offer? Like, how can you help these people?
Well, I help entrepreneur at heart people that are probably in a career, but that their heart is actually they would like to create something outside. They're probably not 100% happy with their job or their lives, and they would like to either start this side hustle and then become entrepreneurs. And sometimes some people want to be entrepreneurs and still have a job, they still want to, but if they don't, I help them to create a sustainable business that allows them to quit their 9-to-5 job and in less than a year. That's what I do.
That is great. That is wonderful.
Yes.
Well, good.
So those people that doesn't want to advance in the careers but they want to start the business, that would be my ideal client.
That is perfect. And where can we find you?
freedomcoachacademy.com. That will be the best place. All my information is there and all my social media is there. And I also offer a free consultation.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
This has been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed this.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much for asking me that question.
You're welcome. No problem. Awesome.
All right.
Well, it's been a pleasure knowing you. Thank you so much. I'm sure this won't be the last time we talk.
I'm sure it would not.
Well, great.
All right.
Thanks
Bye,
so
everyone.
much. Bye now.